Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about the books that I read in the month of March. If you're not already, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it, and let's get into the video. So this month was pretty busy for me in terms of how many books I read. I read 12 books, which I think is like a record breaker for me, but I just really was into reading this month for some reason. I think the books that I read were just so good, I couldn't stop. So let's get started with the first book that I read this month, which is Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. So this is Tessa Bailey's newest book that she has published. It's about a florist and a boy who she was kind of in love with back in high school, and then they meet up again later on in their late 20s. It's a cute little rom-com. His family owns like a vineyard, and it's set somewhere in California, and it's really cute. I gave it 3 stars just because it wasn't like the most in-depth book I've ever read. Like it was just kind of surface level, and it was cute and easy read. I read it so quickly, and it wasn't something that like fully grasped my attention, if that makes sense. The second book that I read this month is The Authenticity Project. So I did kind of thrift this book. I thought it sounded pretty cool. It's kind of about a person who leaves a notebook about their secrets in a cafe, and each person that picks it up leaves a little bit about themselves that nobody knows, and things that they don't necessarily tell other people. And then it's kind of an inner working of how all these people are connected to each other in this community. I rated this book 3 stars just because it wasn't the steamiest book that I've read, and you know, the storyline was good, but it wasn't anything to like that wowed me. The third book that I read this month is Twisted Love by Ana Huang, and this is a 4-book series, and I flew through the entire series in 1 month. They are so good. I absolutely love these books. So I gave this book 5 stars. I don't want to say too much without giving it away, but it has morally gray character in it, a morally gray man in it, and he is like a billionaire, owns his own company, falls in love with his best friend's sister, and she's like a photographer, so it's all about their journey finding each other, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I absolutely 100% recommend this series though, and this is the first book in the series, so you can read all the other books out of order if you wanted to, but you will get some spoilers because there are cameos from previous books in the following books. So these books also follow a group of friends, so there's 4 friends, and it's about them like all finding their love within this like group of morally gray men. And these books are very, very spicy, so definitely 18 and up, and if you're into that, then you will really love these. 4th book that I have read this month is The Golden Couple, and I believe it's by 2 different authors. So Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. And this is a very popular book. I've seen it everywhere. I've had it on my shelf for a very long time, and I just wanted to read it for the longest time. So it's about a couple who joins like couples therapy in a way, and they have all these deep dark secrets that they're keeping from each other, and there's a lot of twists in this book. There's a lot of different storylines, and it also goes back and forth between following the therapist and following the couple. I gave this book 5 stars. It was really, really good. It kept me on my toes. There was things that I didn't see coming in the book, which I love. And there was multiple twists, especially at the very, very end too. So definitely a 5-star rating from me. The 5th book that I read this month, well, I guess last month, is Twisted Games by Ana Huang. It's the 2nd book in the I call it Twisted Men series. Each story is different in a way, where some of them are more smuttier than others. Some of them have better storylines than others, better plots. But Reese Larson is a bodyguard to Bridget. There's lots of plot lines and twists and turns to get where they need to be, but in the end, it is always a good ending. So I gave this book and all the books in the series 5 stars. The 6th book that I read this month was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is the first book in a 3-book series. It's called the Dreamland Billionaires series, and it kind of is like, the storyline's kind of like Disneyland, but they call it Dreamland, and it's set in Orlando, and it's about the CEO or one of the sons of the grandfather who created Dreamland, takes over certain roles within the company, and it's about him falling in love with a person who works at Dreamland, and it's just very, very cute. And I'm from Orlando, so I loved the Orlando aspect of it, and you know, growing up going to Disney, that was fun play on this. And also there's a lot of Pride and Prejudice and Bridgerton cameos that I love, so this was a really, really good book. I think I gave it 5 stars as well. I highly recommend this book if you're into steamy romance novels. These aren't as smutty as the Twisted Men series, but it was really good. And I'm going to start the second one next. 7th book that I read in the month of March is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. Now this is the first book in the Bridgerton series, and I've actually already read this whole entire series, and I've watched the Netflix adaptation of the series multiple times, and I still love it. I can't get enough. It follows Daphne Bridgerton and the Duke Simon, and it's definitely a lot different than the Netflix series if you've seen it. I actually really love the Netflix series more than the first book, but all the other books are, well, the second book is way better than the Netflix series. We actually started reading these for a series book club that I'm a part of, and it's a part of Serendipity Book Club, which is my best friend's book club. She's had it for about 3 years now, and she just created a series book club that's a part of that. So we're reading the entire Bridgerton series, and I am so excited to read them again because I absolutely flew through these during the pandemic, and they're just so amazing. So yeah, this is about Daphne Bridgerton and Simon, who is a duke, and he has a traumatic upbringing when he was a child. His father was just awful to him. He had a speech impediment, and he's kind of navigating his role when he's older. His father dies and he has to take over the dukedom, but he doesn't want to sire an heir because he wants to stick it to his father. But him and Daphne meet, and they kind of form a ruse together. So it's like a fake dating relationship where she's trying to attract more suitors her way. And actually what's different from this book than the series is that Daphne is on her like 3rd season in the book, whereas she is like making her debut season in the series, which I actually really loved because I love the whole queen aspect, which is not something that is in this book. And then like the prince aspect was not in this book as well. But I really did love the book. And you know, these are 5 stars for me all around. I don't have to tell you guys, I love these books. The 8th book that I read last month was Twisted Hate. Again, this is the 3rd book in the 4 series of books of The Twisted Men by Anna Huang. And this book is honestly the most realistic out of all of the other books because it involves Josh Chen and Jules Ambrose. So Josh is like an ER physician and Jules is studying to become a lawyer. So I feel like it's the most realistic out of all of them because the other ones are about like a princess and a bodyguard and then a billionaire and like a photographer. So I feel like those don't necessarily always happen, but this could actually happen. It's just a really good book. I don't really want to give anything away. So, you know, 5 stars from me. If you haven't picked up the Twisted Men series, then definitely start now. The 9th book that I finished last month is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is one of my absolute favorite books I've ever read. I was first getting into reading again during the pandemic. This was one of the first books that I picked up, and it kind of changed my way of thinking about reading because I've never read a book like this. And Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my favorite authors. I've read literally all of her books. So this is the second time I am reading this book, and this was actually for our March book club with Serendipity Book Club. I think that this book is loosely based off of the actor Elizabeth Taylor, because I think she got married like 8 or 7 times. But it's not necessarily true to her story. I think it's just loosely based off of that. Evelyn Hugo is a famous Hollywood actress. It kind of starts with her in her older age and seeking out a reporter to write her life story, basically. And there is a major twist in the end of why she picks this reporter. But it basically starts from, you know, her teenage years to where she is now, and it goes through each husband. I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it yet. I absolutely love it. For people who are first getting into reading again, I always recommend this book, and then Where the Crawdads Sing or The Silent Patient, because those are like 3 of my favorite books that I've ever read. The 10th book that I read this month was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And this book was actually a part of the Classics Book Club that I'm a part of with Serendipity Book Club. So Serendipity Book Club, she has the general book club, which was, what we read this month was Evelyn Hugo for that one. And then she has the series book club, which is, we're reading Bridgerton series. And then she has the Classics Book Club, where we're reading books that are classic novels. I've never read anything by Charlotte Bronte or the Bronte sisters, and I have seen the Jane Eyre movie, but I've never read the book. So I was really excited to read this. It is harder to get through because it's written like all the way back in the 1800s, and it's just different way of writing back then. It follows Jane Eyre beginning in her childhood. She's treated just so poorly. It's almost like a Cinderella story in a way, where she's living with her aunt, and then she goes into a girl's home, and then she becomes a governess with Mr. Rochester, and then something happens there where she flees and becomes a teacher. And overall, it does have a happy ending. I really loved reading the ending, and there's some things in the book that aren't in the movie. Overall, I gave it 4 stars just because, you know, it's not, like, classic literature is not my favorite to read, just because it's kind of hard to understand what they're even talking about sometimes with the language. And I also wasn't a huge fan of how people treated her and almost the gaslighting that goes on in this, which we do have to take into account. You know, this was written in the 1800s. Overall, it was kind of hard for me to fully get through it. Like, it would have taken me a long time to get through it if it wasn't for the book club. And I don't think I'll ever read this again, but I would recommend it if people are into classic literature like this. So the 11th book that I read, which I actually gave it to my friend Sarah because she needs to read the last book, is Twisted Lies. So I'll just show you on my phone. It is the 4th and final book to the Twisted Men series by Anna Huang, and this is about the final friend who is Stella in the women's friend group. She's like a social media influencer. There's like a billionaire who is the morally gray interest in this story, and he has his whole past that he has to deal with, while she has a lot of trauma too growing up. Her parents always wanted her to be the best and all this stuff. But it was honestly my favorite book of the entire series. It was the longest book in the series, but it was absolutely my favorite. I think my favorites were Twisted Love and Twisted Lies. But I did love them all, and I would honestly reread them all again, so I hope that we can do them for the series book club at some point. But yeah, I gave that book 5 stars. I would give it 6 stars if I could. The 12th and final book that I read this month was If We Ever Meet Again, which I audiobooked this book, so I don't have a physical copy. It's another book by Anna Huang. I don't know how to describe it. It's about like 2 college students who, one's like 19 and one is 22, so they're kind of younger. It's kind of like a younger adult book. There's some twists and turns in it, which every book has some twists and turns, and it kind of leaves off as a cliffhanger. So I think that this is part of like a 3 or 4 book series, but it just focuses on the first characters in each book. So I gave this book a 3 stars just because it wasn't like, I don't think I'll ever read it again. I don't know if I'll recommend it. I'm more reading it just because I love this author in general and I want to read all of her works. But we'll see. I'm already reading the second book in this series and we'll see how that plays out. I read 12 books in the month of March, which is crazy to even think about. I literally went from reading no books 3 years ago to now I have a goal of 70 books. And overall, I've read 22 books this year so far. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it gives you some inspiration to read. Out of all the books, I highly recommend the Twisted Men series. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!